So I will take this workshop and I'll post it to a YouTube channel where I'm going to have all the Gamesalad tutorials, and I'll edit some of them down so they are a little bit easier to take in. But we're going to go ahead and start here. So we're going to have Gamesalad open. If you guys want to have Gamesalad open as you go through this, that's cool. If you want to take notes as we go through this and that's all you're wanting to do, that's fine too. Just make sure you have some way to follow along, because we're going to go through a few different things today. Today we're going to be adding in an enemy that your player has to deal with. We're going to be going into some of the variable types, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about global variables or game variables. Now in Gamesalad they call these attributes, but when you get into programming they're going to call these variables. Okay, so I'm going to use those words interchangeably, attributes and variables. Okay, so we already have this set up. This is intended to already be done when you start doing this. So we have our player with move right, left, jump. They have some gravity applied to them. There's already a platform for them to stand on, and we're going to need to use that for our enemy as well. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to create our enemy. Hit the little plus right down here, and we'll see actor 1 pop up. I'm going to call this enemy. Or you know what, I'm going to call this, let's see, we got Francis there. I'm going to call this one Beth. Beth sounds like a bad guy. Why not? All right, so we got Beth here. We're going to change Beth to red because she's a bad guy. And we're going to do a little housekeeping. Under physics, we got friction. We're going to set that for 0 so it doesn't slowly start slowing the speed down as the character's moving around. We're also going to make sure we turn off bounciness. We don't want it to rotate if it comes to an edge and falls off or anything like that. And we do want it to be movable. So those are the basics for that. Now if I'm going to go back down into here and take a look at a few things on Francis. Now what we're going to want this enemy to be able to do is destroy Francis. Okay? And one key thing that you need to be looking for whenever working with these is that if you want something to happen to that actor, it needs to be coded on that actor. Okay? So what do I mean by that? Let's say we have Beth. We give Beth a gun. I don't know who gave Beth a gun, but we gave Beth a gun. And Beth is going to be shooting, or maybe she's got a knife. When she gets close to Francis, she's going to stab him. Okay? Now the knife doesn't say, all right, you got to die now, Francis. Francis knows when I get touched with this knife, I die. Okay? So anything you code for a reaction has to be on that actor that it happens to. Not on the thing that's going to touch it. It needs to be on that actor. Okay? We'll kind of come back and talk about that a little bit more as we work through these things. So Francis we're going to come back to and touch in just a second. The player character anyway. We're going to go to Beth right now. And if you guys are seeing an issue like I have here, where you're not seeing anything popping up, no behaviors, if we go into Francis, we don't see them there either. This is something that happens from time to time. Probably the easiest thing to do is go in, quit Gamesalad, save what you have, of course, because you don't want to lose whatever you're working on. And we'll just restart it. So this is something that happens from time to time. Gamesalad is a program that takes this visual setup and it turns it into code. So sometimes there can be some issues as it stands right now. So let's go back in. Let's take a look at Beth. Hey, there's our behaviors are back. Okay, so first thing we want to do, we want Beth to move back and forth. All I want her to do is walk back and forth. She's a little upset, so we're going to make her do that. All right, so first thing we want to do, I want her to move to the left for a few seconds and then back to the right. So what I'm going to do is go in here and I'm going to grab a timer. Okay. Now you guys are thinking like, hey, why do we need this? Well, I want them to move to the left for a certain amount of time and then switch and go back the other way for a certain amount of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and say, all right, for every 1 second, I want you to move to the left. Okay, so we'll start off with move to, or move, sorry. And let's see, it's all in alphabetical order, so it's right there. We're going to grab move. And I want move to go to the left because they're going to be coming in from the left going to the right. We want this one starting from the right and go to the left. So we're going to say 150 so we can run away from them hopefully. And we want it to go to the left. So back to the left would be 180. Okay, so every one second we want to do this. Now wait a second, this is only going to go in one direction. So what I'm going to have to do is set something up so this gives us more of what we need. So if I put this in here, she didn't even do anything. Let's figure out why. Okay. So what this is asking me to do, or what I'm asking Beth to do at this point, is every 1 second to do this, but she doesn't have any trigger to really make it happen right now, right? In fact, on top of that, she really doesn't know what's going on. So what we need to do is we're going to set up a switch button. Okay, so you guys ever seen these buttons? You push it once, it turns it on. You push it again, it turns off. Like it's a light switch. It just goes back and forth. Kind of like that, except the button on the bottom. Okay, and people who are at home that can't see the light switch we're talking about, there's a button with a dimmer. And the button, you push it once, turns on, push it again, turns off. Okay, so that's what we're going to make real quick. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make some new attributes, variables. Okay, so let's run through these real quick. Boolean is true or false. You guys have seen this with Scratch. We kind of faked this a little bit with some numbers. Boolean is black or white, on or off, true or false. That's all it does. It can't have any other values. Text, you're just looking for something to be written on the screen. This is purely for the humans involved because the computer doesn't care about text really. It just handles it for us. Integer, now there's two different numbers we have here, integer and real. Integer has no decimal places. Usually integer is going to be used for things like in your head, maybe you have 50 rounds of ammo, you have 1 health pack, you have 1 of something. You don't have fractions, you don't have decimal places. That's going to be with real. If you have to be specific about where you're going to be, or you're parenting something to another thing, like maybe you want a character to follow another character and stay right with them, then you need to use a real number because that's going to have it down to the decimal place. Yep. Okay. Angle, degrees, 90 degrees, 50 degrees, whatever. That's what that is. And index is going to be used when we look at tables a little later on. So for right now, these 4 up at the front, Boolean, text, integer, and real, those are the only ones we're really going to focus on at this point. And since we're going to be looking at something to make them turn left and right, we're going to be using a Boolean because we want to say like, all right, let's go left. If we're not going left, we want to go right, that kind of thing. So let's use that. Now the new attribute shows up right here. I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to call this one move left. Okay. And right now I'm going to leave it for true. So every 1 second, we'll say 1 second. We can always shorten that if we want to, depending on what we need for the game. I'm going to take this and I want to create a rule. I'm going to put the rule inside of the timer. So what this is going to do is it's going to check and see if the attribute for this move left is true, then what I want to do is I'm going to change the attribute. If it's true, I'm going to make it false. So I'll go down here into Beth, move left, we're going to change it to false. And otherwise, which is the other side of that, it's like if it's not true, I want to change it to true. Okay, so this is kind of our push button that we were talking about. So every 1 second, it's going to change this back and forth. Now, one really handy thing to use here is this display text behavior. If you're not sure how your variables are acting, you can actually go in here, go to display text, and you can specify that specific variable, and it'll tell you what state it's currently in. Okay, so let's just see if it's working right. Okay, so it's true, false, true, false. So every second it should be switching back and forth between these two things. Okay, and let's go in here and let's add some motion now. So we're going to create another rule. We're looking for this attribute to say like, okay, if we are moving left, if move left is true, that means we're moving to the left, then what I want to do is I'm going to use move this time. Okay, and we want to move to the left, so that's 180. Okay, and I want to change this to 150. And if we're not moving to the left, we're moving to the right. So I'm going to just drag this down, 0. And this should move Beth back and forth. Let's see what happens. There she goes. She's moving back and forth. All right, so this is basic functionality for an enemy you might want to have. Maybe this could be used for a platform. If you wanted to land on a platform and have something that moves back and forth between a chasm or a pit or something like that, this could be used there as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off since we don't really need it. What are some ways we could possibly make this move further? Any ideas? How can we make this move further? You could change the direction, but that's really just going to change which way it goes. You could change the time.
Like if you could follow it until a certain point.
We could make it follow it to a certain point. We could change the time here. If I set this for 2, this is going to go a little bit further before it decides to change and go back. So that'll help. You could also increase the speed. Okay, if you increase the speed, that means it's going to travel a lot further in a shorter amount of time. So there's a couple different ways you can tweak this to be what you need it to be. Okay, so this isn't quite what I want it to be. I want this thing to follow Francis around. Like, this is a crazy ex-girlfriend right here. So I want this character to follow this person around all the time. Okay, so the way I'm going to work this is I want move to. Or you could use accelerate towards, something like that. You really have to pay attention to which ones of these you want to use because they can cause you an issue. Accelerate towards has to decelerate before it changes direction. So if you've got something like what we had here with a timer, it may not get a chance to decelerate and change its direction before this timer has run to its next space. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We're going to go in here and we're going to use move to. We're going to drag that in as soon as my mouse decides to grab only one thing at a time. There we go. Move to is kind of handy because what we can do is we can have it move to an X and Y position on the screen. You could use this for your player character if you wanted to set up mouse position or something like that. If you wanted the character to walk to wherever the mouse was, this can be handy with that. But in our case, we want Beth to go chasing after Francis. Okay? So if we're going to do that, we have to do something with game variables. Okay, so the way these are different, under your actor, you have all your attributes and variables over here. For a game variable, this is something that every actor in the game can access. You want to go in here under game and go to the attributes section. Okay, I've already created player X position and player Y position. I'm going to recreate them again real quick just so you guys have them. I've used real in this case because I want to know exactly where our character's at and I want to be able to match up with it. So first one is player X POS, that's for position, and then one more. Let's jump back in there. Player Y POS. There we go. All right, since we want this to be Francis's X and Y position, we've got to do something where we just grab that as soon as the game starts. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab change attribute. We have to be specific here now because we're grabbing the game. We're going to change the game attribute for player X position. We're going to set that to Francis's X position right there. I want to do the same thing for Y. Okay. So I want to make sure I grab the game attribute. We're changing that one into the position Y for Francis. Okay, so right now, Francis is feeding his X and Y position out to the game. So now everybody can find him. He basically just gave up his location on Facebook or something like that. Now she knows he's going to be at the coffee shop at 3 o'clock. We're going to go right there. So now what we're going to do, we have our move to. We're going to set this so Beth is going to go to the position that we have here for X. And we're also going to get this one here. Whoops, it's game position for player position Y. Okay, so this is going to do it for us. Let's see what happens. Okay, she goes right to it and she stops. But she doesn't keep going. Okay, that's a problem. Okay, so if I keep... She went to where Francis was, right? If I put Francis somewhere else, like if I put her over here, and I decide to put him right here. Now he's going to jump out of the way. She went to where he was. Now that can be helpful, but that may not be what you want. So instead, what I need to do, instead of using change attribute here, change does it once. It does it whenever you have a trigger for it. It does it whenever you start the program, and it doesn't need a rule or anything like that. It does it right here. Instead, what we want to do is something that constantly updates. And that's going to be constrain attribute, not change. We want to constrain it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to set the game attribute of player exposition to constantly update to Francis's exposition. I'm going to drag this one down again, and we're going to go to the Y position that we set up. Same thing here. We're going to set this for Francis's Y position. Okay. All right, now when we try this, I have a feeling he's not going to be able to get away from Beth. She's going to follow him everywhere he goes for the most part. Now, when she matches up with it, she's going to think, I've got it, I've matched it, I'm fine now. So sometimes what you have to do is go in here and you can place a timer around it. Okay? Now, more than likely, this is constantly getting updated, so we're not having to worry about that. But with Beth, she always moves to something. Now, once she's reached it, she stops. Okay? So in this case, we're going to use a timer again. And what this is going to do is it's going to constantly be checking 0.05. I want it to be always looking for this new updated position. I want to set this to 150 so Frank can get away. And now every 0.05 seconds she should be looking for him. So we'll go here. Now she's going a little slow, but I'm going to match her up real quick so you can see she should have stopped. I'm going to let it rest, and then when I move away it'll start chasing again. So if you're having an issue with something where it's not following you or it's not responding the way you want it to, like it did it and then it stopped, you may need to put a timer in so it constantly updates. Okay? There's some other ways we can handle this, but that's one. All right, now I said Beth was going to destroy Frank for everything that he did to her. So we're going to go in here to Francis real quick. And remember what I said at the beginning. If you want something to happen to an actor, you have to code it onto that actor. Okay? So in this instance, this is real easy. As soon as this actor overlaps or collides with Beth, then we're going to destroy this character. Okay? That's it. That's all you have to do. I'm going to hit preview. Oh! It just disappears. There's not a whole lot of fanfare going on or anything like that. We didn't see him explode and we heard him scream. If you want that to happen, make sure you code it before you destroy the actor, because it didn't just turn him invisible. It actually eliminated him from the game. He's gone. He's deleted. Okay? So if you destroy something, keep that in mind. If you wanted something to happen after the destroy, you can't, because you destroyed that actor. Okay? Make sure you code all that stuff in before you destroy it. If you want something to count up on a score, you want another thing to say like, all right, you use this many lives, make sure you do that before you destroy your actor. Okay? But that's basically it. We now have an actor that will chase us down and kill us, and make sure that we never hurt anybody else ever again. I don't know exactly what Francis did to Beth, but boy, she didn't like him. So notice he's gone now. There's no more updated information, so now it's just Beth. Okay? All right, guys, that is what we're going to be adding into our programs now as an enemy. And I've shown you a couple different ways you can have that enemy interact. And that's it for today.